I don't know about you, but sometimes I find it hard to believe that Vikings even existed. Whether it was hearing about a giant Norse warrior on Stamford Bridge, or stories of Norse mythology that inspired Tolkien's writings, Vikings somehow have this mysticism and legend surrounding them. Then summer of 2019 rolls around and drops this on my desk. An hour of snowy goodness of a large, strong man doing stuff around his village somewhere not here. And it was weird. The pacing was just slow. Yet, unlike many other shows where they drown you in atmosphere, I didn't get bored or stay aloof, but instead I was drawn in just because it was interesting and fun to see how this story and world would play out. And look, I don't want to be trite. In fact, a lot of the time when I watch others talk about their experiences and how much they were drawn into a fictional world, it only has me wondering why I didn't feel the same, and think to myself, well, this is just a bit flowery and exaggerated. And I expect many people to feel this way after watching this video, and that is very understandable. But what can I say? This is just me being honest. Vinland Saga was different. I felt like the pieces were moving together to create an even bigger story, and yet I was just happy to watch. And this was just the beginning. After those first 3 episodes, I found out, like many people, that I had to wait a whole 3 weeks for the next episode, so I just went ahead and bought the manga. And here we are, 8 months later. The anime is wrapped up, and who would have guessed it? Vinland Saga's good. Really bloody good. Written and drawn by Makoto Yukimura, and recently animated by Wit Studio, Vinland Saga is set in a society and world where bloodshed and war are the status quo. We follow the young man Thorfinn Karlsefni as he tries to claim vengeance on his father's killer. And it is here that Yukimura, aside from his tendencies for accepting wards looking like this, makes himself stand out a little. This being that he places emphasis first on the message he is trying to say, shown by the fact that he decided to place this story in its Viking setting, being quite different from his previous work, a sci-fi manga called Planet S. When he was asked about this in an interview and why he chose the Viking setting, he said,
ある日思ったんですね。僕はもっと一生懸命暴力とは何かということに向き合って書いていかなければいけないなと。では暴力についてしっかり書くとしたら、やっぱり世界観はこういう乱暴な人間たちが。
And this leads to one of Vinland Saga's more controversial traits. From what I gather from the few seinen manga I've read, there is a tendency to paint the world in this grey shade of morality. That meaning the world often does not have a definitive right and wrong. There's not a good side or a bad side. Instead, there is a world that our characters just have to walk through and deal with one step at a time. And I think this is why Vinland Saga is fundamentally different to others around it, particularly Berserk. On the surface, characters may look similar or fulfill comparable roles, and sometimes Yukimura even uses these existing links to add twist and surprise, but under the hood it is clear that they are different. There is a moral bad in Vinland Saga, and that is war. For all the awesome and gripping fighting scenes that happen in Vinland Saga, there is always another to pull back the viewer and force us to look at the greater picture. It may be fun and enjoyable to watch Thorfinn hack and slash his way through a line of enemies, but also tragic to watch how his actions have little regard for the innocent people who just want to live a normal life. And while this is initially just an undercurrent theme, the idea only became more prevalent as the manga goes on. One of the reoccurring themes of the prologue being how all these people are trying to escape the horrid world of war that they live in, whether it be someplace in the afterlife, an existential force saving the world, or running away from the war entirely. Vinland Saga wears this message on its sleeve, yet sometimes us the viewer is more focused on the flashy new tie instead, missing the ideas being presented, and feeling a little bit lost when the focus of the series seems to have moved on or changed. And just to say, I'm not here to discuss the controversies of the second arc or the third major arc for that fact. they are going to be left for another video. Those topics have been covered a lot on forums elsewhere, and I don't think I can do it justice in the time of this already very long video. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes of why I love this series. One of Vinland Saga's greatest strengths is his ability to make the story feel real. It gives you this uncanny feeling that you are just watching history unfold right before your eyes. This is partly due to the artwork, as the backgrounds are drawn with such beauty and clarity. It evokes a feeling of nostalgia for places I have never been, allowing you to see the details in everything, from the sprawling, massive Atlantic Ocean to a simple pot of stew. And this is not even getting to one of my favorite parts of the art, the people. It is a common meme in anime that is easy to tell who the most important characters are, mainly due to them having a mixture of eccentric colourful hair, wearing your not so typical clothes, or just being decked out with some ridiculous looking weaponry. And this is not a bad thing. It helps distinguish a character from a crowd, why they are recognised and you should pay attention to them, and just makes them more memorable in general. However, Yukimura does not take this approach, instead detailing every character with unique facial hair and different garments, even if they don't say anything at all or only appear in one single panel. The only exceptions to this are when a character adorns a uniform, for example, the Jorm's Viking, or if it's something specifically character related, such as Askeladd's Roman breastplate, a neat character detail that puts questions in your mind about Askeladd before that information is even revealed. On top of this, the realistic proportions of the characters and complicated facial expressions allow for the art to carry an emotion of what the characters are thinking and saying, adding an extra layer of subtlety that makes this manga worth reading again and again. Take this picture of Thorfinn in the second arc. I won't spoil anything, but this is one of my favourite panels in the whole manga, for the sole reason that I felt like it was a great mix between Thor's and Askeladd. The expression on his face is a mixture of his two father figures and how they've moulded his life up until this point. I may be stretching with this, but that's what I thought when I saw this page for the first time. And all of this helps convey a world that is alive and breathing, with no weapon, grain of wheat, or eyeball-eating crow being overlooked. And it is obvious why. Perfectionism is one of Yukimura's self-proclaimed traits, with it taking roughly 2 weeks of 12-hour workdays for him and his 4 assistants to produce just 30 pages of manga. And Yukimura does all the writing and character drawing himself. And considering that the manga has been going on for 15 years, the amount of dedication and effort displayed is, well, to put it lightly, incredibly admirable. Maybe one of my favourite examples of this eyeful detail is the attention placed on battle scars and how they come up again and again, further adding to that real feeling I talked about earlier, with events not just affecting the plot, but also the visual design of characters. This also applies to age, with hairlines retreating and wrinkles appearing as you move further and further along in the stories. A side note here is actually Yukimura's art style has improved dramatically over time, with a mixture of going from a weekly to a monthly series, but also just with him improving as an artist in general. You can see it in the differences between Floki, Thor's and Askeladd that I'm showing here. The second area that helps make Vinland Saga feel real is the matter-of-fact writing style that Yukimura uses, showing his characters as likable yet despicable. Moreover, they are often shown to have deep complexities that are often not said explicitly, but instead suggested over time, allowing you, the reader, to piece things together to craft a bigger picture yourself. For example of this, let's take crowd favourite and everybody's best girl, Thorkell. Thorkell is a monster of a man, standing heads and shoulders above the rest of the world. With the strength of a gorilla and a chin so prominent you could hang your drinking horn from it, he is hailed as the strongest warrior in the world, swiftly making mincemeat of your average soldiers. He is known for some of the most crazy feats in the manga, from occasionally wielding a massive log into battle to stopping a charging horse by simply punching it. However, despite this terrifying disposition, he is shown to be quite jovial and a seemingly simple guy, being one of the few characters that actually fights wars for the sake of fighting, unlike others who do it for gold, women, or camaraderie. Thorkell initially seems like a big child, unpredictable and emotional, but this is because his rationale isn't really based off the conventional rules of war or the time, and instead it just turns out he is actually quite reasonable when you look at things from his worldview and perspective. An example of this would be when he switches sides to help English in the war. His reasoning being that he could have more of a chance fighting the army of King Sven over the English one, thus making it more fun. And this is very different from the values of a character like Floki, whose goal is a political one, where winning is what matters, not fighting. And Thorkel abides by his values, in turn making him seem more and more reasonable the more and more you spend time around him. He's actually shown to be incredibly perceptive and smart, being able to catch on to things that other characters may not. However, while it's not yet clear, I suspect Thorkel has another deeper trait to him. See, if you have a look at the wider narrative, Thorkel is this embodiment of the romanticization of war and battle. But even for the world's greatest warrior, war takes a toll on him. He lives for war, and is shown to have withdrawal symptoms. This in tandem with the implication that Thorkel has a tendency for not going all out on exceptional warriors that challenge him, leads me to suspect that Thorkel does not actually want to kill his opponent, but instead he keeps them alive so that they can fight again another day, in the hopes that he won't ever run out of strong opponents to face. It is lonely at the top, and when the previous greatest warrior and greatest challenge to you disappears, leads you to having a hope that something could possibly surpass it. And Thorkel is not the only one like this. Endless discussions have happened on Askeladd, Halfdan, Kettle, and tons others throughout the story, most having nuances and intrigue to them. This makes it a common occurrence that I find myself thinking about them in the quieter moments of my life, whether it is walking to Asda to get a jug of milk, or, my personal favourite, sitting in the shower at 1 PM wondering where the day has gone. Finally, many of the characters have an interesting relationship with Thorfinn, the protagonist, but also with many other characters in the series, making them all feel like they stand alone as an individual piece in the world. Speaking of pieces, there is no piece of artwork that is perfect, so I think I should outline some of my issues and some of the cautions I would give to those going straight from the anime into the manga. Vinland Saga, while linking art one into each other very well, do differ in significant ways. One being the second art forgoes a lot of the fighting and political games of the prologue in its earlier parts, and instead taking a more introspective look on Thorfinn and his character, while also introducing new characters and letting other older ones take a back seat. As for the third major arc, while there is more fighting and mind game trickery, there's a lot more humour and the tone is a little lighter. This is mainly due to the types of characters added and explored, which in turn makes some parts feel a lot less grounded than the rest of the manga. So be cautious. I love where Vinland Saga has gone, however there are many people who have not enjoyed it as much, shown by the bucket loads of discussions on which arc is the best. All of this including a slow production schedule of about 20 to 25 pages a month, and the manga can feel incredibly slow paced. However, when I feel like you read it in bulk, the pacing comes together very well. As for criticisms of my own, at first I would say is the humour. Sometimes the manga had me laughing out loud and often exhaling through my nose. However, there are a few points where the humour is used in the wrong places, particularly in highly emotional points that ruin the tone quite a bit, and this is most notable in the later half of the Eastern Expedition arc. As for my second issue, it may be one that is a little bit surprising with what I've said previously. The issue is that there are a lot of women in this manga that look incredibly similar, and while Yukimura loves to experiment with their hair with really actually interesting designs, their faces often look the same. In comparison, when you look at lots of the minor male characters, lots of them look very different to the rest, with Yukimura changing their facial structures, noses, eyes, and so on. But for the women, this treatment is rare, with a feeling that there's only like 2 standard archetypes for what female characters look like. Now, some of the more prominent female characters have quite distinguishing facial traits, such as Hyld's scars or Gudrid's rosy cheeks. But even these examples, when put next to other characters, I can't help but feel they look just a little too much alike. And initially I thought this was due to there being a pressure to often make women beautiful and attractive in order to make their designs appealing, as this manga is geared towards young adult men. But when looking at this earlier panel, it seems like Yukimura can actually do a lot of pretty women with different facial types. I know this may feel like a bit of a nitpick, and I don't have any inherent qualms with making women attractive to make their designs appealing, but it's just when a certain character appears and I feel like I've seen them before, I can't help but feel that robs them of a little bit of personality. And for my final criticism, there is some specific writing choices that I dislike, where Yukimura shows depth and potential, yet goes in a different direction that, in my opinion, sucks a lot of the previous nuance out of the character and or relationship. This is very few and far between. It just makes these examples feel just that more egregious and stand out that little bit more. Now, I could go on and on about Vinland Saga, but this video is getting too long, and I'm sure you're getting tired of my voice and its lowering inflections. So, let's talk about one more thing, and that is the work and effort put into depicting the time of the Vikings. Yukimura spent months traveling around Europe and North America trying to understand the lives that the people lived at the time, so he could write it and depict it as accurately as possible. And this is a massive investment of time and money from an author who had only written one manga prior. And this effort shows in everything, from the structures of the houses, to the clothes they wear, to the geography of the areas. Whether it is the rolling hills of England or the rocky valleys of Wales, it would often remind me of the times I've been there and I've seen them myself. And all of this is coming from a man who has grown up and lives on the other side of the world. To me, that is just crazy. But one area that hits close to home and really elevated my respect for this series is how Yukimura portrays religion, in particular Christianity. Generally, when anime takes inspiration from Christianity, normally I find it comes in two forms. The first one being abstract concepts, symbolism, and deeper meaning, to add that extra layer to your work, such as Death Note and Neon Genesis Evangelion. The second form being the way that the religious establishment is set up in the world, where more material inspirations occur, whether it be in the places of worship or the clothes that followers wear. But Vinland Saga has a very different approach. Christianity is approached from an angle of personal and small-sized faith, often showing the beliefs of individuals and how it affects their lives, displaying many examples of personal belief, often contradictory to others previously said, whether it be a boy disbanding his faith after seeing the suffering in the world with no divine intervention, or a woman helping a child because she believes that Jesus would not forgive her if she didn't. Yukimura dabbles in so many areas of the Christian faith, how it can be interpreted and how it influences people. From legalism, grace and forgiveness, works-based salvation, or even having a fairly unique theological take on love, all of this, no matter whether you agree on it or not, adds richness to how the people of this world operate, with no one view mentioned twice, displaying the nuance and vastness of the worldviews Northern Europe has to offer. I mean, look at this page at the beginning of Volume 6. It's a quote from Ecclesiastes, a book you rarely hear talked about in wider society and church sermons. A book known for its statements on the fickleness of life and the vapid, fleeting nature of meaning. I can only guess the reasoning behind this quote, but I think it fits really well with the themes of the manga and is said up until this point. It is clear to me that Yukimura should be at least commended for his efforts of historical accuracy. Vinland Saga had and still has a profound effect on me for many reasons, but in particular because it felt so real and you could feel the care and effort put into every nook and cranny. And all I can do is respect that. Near the end of last year, Yukimura stated that we were entering into the final major arc of the manga, meaning that we'll have at least 4 years until this manga ends. The contents of this arc is, according to Yukimura himself, what he is most interested in and excited to write about. And when hearing that from a man who has had the passion and drive to do all this, it can only make me just a little bit excited.